Happy Thanksgiving week, folks. Welcome back to AskGSM, episode 521 here today for Wednesday, November 22nd, 2023. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are having a great week so far and enjoy the holiday tomorrow. And if you're not in the States, just have a great Thursday. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section in this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Let's get right into it. I got a lot of Thanksgiving stuff to do before tomorrow, so let's get right into it right away here. Nike Only from YouTube, their first question was, should the WWE play CM Punk's music at Survivor Series only to have Grayson Waller come out to his entrance? I've seen some people say that. Listen, I love Grayson Waller. I wouldn't do that. I just feel like that would just unnecessarily piss people off. Because I feel like enough people read the internet now where people will expect CM Punk anyway, because that's just how wrestling fans are. And he could still show up. I'm not saying it's impossible. I don't think he is. But it would remind people like, oh yeah, he could have been here and he's not. Not that WWE could have or should have brought him in and they just didn't. I mean, they're not doing that for a reason. He probably would be there if he can or wanted to, and he does want to, but WWE doesn't feel like it's the right time, I would imagine. He'll be back at some point. I just don't think it's going to be anytime soon. No, I don't think it's necessary. It would be like a short-term gain just to piss off the audience. It's different because I would have done that with Bad News Barrett years ago. Not when Punk was gone from the company, but like when he was still there. Like when he was still there, to have Barrett come out to the music would have been cool in Chicago when he was still like kind of under contract with the company. That would have been fucking funny. But like now that there's an actual chance Punk could come back at some point, I wouldn't waste that pop on that and then have Punk come back at some point, and then it's not as big of a pop because people might think they might have their guard up and think, all right, it's someone like a Grayson Waller instead. I just don't think it's necessary. Don't bring attention to it until that time comes for him to return. So no, I don't think that's going to happen, and no, I don't think they should do it. It is funny, but I just feel like they would get a lot of shit for that. That's just... Some people would think it's hysterical and just not really care. Some people in the building specifically, it might ruin the rest of the show for some people. So I would not do that. So, but it would be funny though. Mike Does It, their question was, first of two questions. Would you want to see the Cruiserweight division come back for guys like Dragon Lee, Cedric Alexander, and Cameron Grimes? No, I just feel like WWE's established that they can never do a Cruiserweight division properly. And the only place that it would really work would be in NXT. I know Triple H is in charge of the main roster now, so it would be different than when Vince was in charge. But still, I just feel like with the X Division, it's different, because like the X Division in Impact, people go from the X Division to the Tag Team Division or the Main Event Division. In WWE, that Cruiserweight division last time, it was like you were pigeonholed in that division, where if you were in that division, you were not getting out of it, unless you were an elite few people. Very few people actually escaped the Cruiserweight division after a certain point. And if you did, you never really got high up the card. So I wouldn't do that. I think Dragon Lee's ceiling is much higher than a Cruiserweight division. I'd like to see him go for the Intercontinental or United States Championship. Cedric is cooked. I mean, I love Cedric. He's great, but he's been around for so long. He's never going to get beyond where he is right now. Cameron, again, I feel like he's new, but I feel like he also has a higher ceiling than a Cruiserweight division. So I'm going to say no to that. WWE should be focusing those people in other storylines that aren't just pigeonholed in one division. And then his second question, a very good question, what is your favorite wrestling t-shirt that you own? I definitely did a video about this, I think on Black Friday actually, or around Black Friday, probably about like 7 or 8, 9 years ago. Because I have a lot of wrestling t-shirts, so I went through the ones that I had at that point, went through my favorite ones. I always go back to the purple Macho Man shirt. I've had that for probably close to a decade now. And it's a comfortable shirt. It's a nice style. Everyone knows and recognizes Macho Man for the most part. If you've ever been exposed to wrestling, you know Macho Man. So it's a nice little shout out to him, and people recognize the shirt. Any of my Punk shirts I like. Those were always, I really like those shirts. The AEW ones, the WWE ones specifically. And even some of the pro wrestling tees ones that I own that weren't from WWE or AEW. I've got an Edge shirt I really like. Alexis got that for me a while ago, and probably a couple years ago, and it's, one of his WWE ones from when he first came back. I like that one. The Christian Cage t-shirt, the one that they came out with a couple years ago, I have that one that I really like. I have that and really like that shirt. I'm trying to think. There's just so many I'm trying to look like right now over like where my shirts are, or of what I can see. Those would be the main ones. I like, I used to get all the black and whites, but I feel like I have so many black and white shirts that the ones that aren't your traditional black and white are the ones I really like. There's a Jeff Hardy shirt that I have that's blue from like 5 years ago, from when he was in WWE. It's a different style shirt. It's not really a wrestling shirt. The ones that don't have the WWE tag on the side too, I also like. That, and also, what was the other one I was thinking of? Some of the event shirts that I have, like the Survivor Series ones, some of the SummerSlam ones, some of the WrestleMania ones that I have, I really like. Those are really good. There was another one that I was trying to think of. It wasn't blue, because the Jeff Hardy one was blue. The Street Profits one that I have, the one that said, like, the Profits are up or whatever it is, the one that they had when they first came up to the main roster, I like that one. Oh, there's the LA Knight shirt one I really like too. The red one, I got that one when they first released it about a year ago. But the Eli Drake shirt, I think they still sell it on a Pro Wrestling Tees. It's a V-neck, and it doesn't look like a wrestling shirt at all, but it says Eli on it, like in fancy lettering. And I just really like that shirt. I'm not like a fancy person at all. I usually just wear wrestling shirts most of the time, but I really, really like that shirt because it's a different style of wrestling shirt. So I don't know if it's my number one favorite, but it's probably up there. So that's it for the YouTube questions. I haven't organized the questions yet. I apologize. So I got to go through each one here and kind of filter through them. No L from Facebook. They said, first, happy early Thanksgiving, everyone. Very nice of you to say that. Thank you very much. Their first question was, do you see Bayley getting kicked out of Damage Control after Survivor Series? Yes, but not right after Survivor Series. Not at the event itself, and not like on the SmackDown after or whatever. I feel like it would be a while later, probably like around the Rumble season, because Triple H really does like his long-term storytelling. So I wouldn't go to it so quickly. But probably, around the Rumble season to set up either a Damage Control triple threat for Mania or just Bayley and Io straight up. Either one works. And their second question, who should beat MJF for the AEW World Championship? I've answered this before, I think, but, stuff has changed since then. Wardlow, I want to see a Wardlow MJF program. I don't know if Wardlow should be the guy to beat him for the belt. That would just be going from 0 to 100 because he's not ready for that yet. I mean, Wardlow's good, but like he's done nothing for so long. Just to put the belt on him out of nowhere would be weird. Two people come to mind. One, Samoa Joe. Not just for like the idea of a token run, but like Samoa Joe's just so fucking good. He's so over. It's now or never with the guy to put a world championship on him. It's either now or it's just never going to happen. So I would do it now while he can still go and he's still on the show and he's still relevant. So I would do Joe. And I also would not give Joe another shot if he was just going to lose. I feel like that's silly. And that happened a lot in WWE where they kept him in the title picture and he was not winning the title and it was just pointless after a while. He got so many world title shots in WWE, never won a single one. That pissed me off. But if it's not Samoa Joe, Swerve Strickland. Again, it might be too soon because he hasn't won a singles championship yet, like he has now the TNT title or the international title. But he's coming off of two big wins over Adam Page in two great matches. And MJF, I know, is very high on Swerve. He likes Swerve a lot. I feel like he would not have an issue at all. Not that the strong factor, but I think he would want to drop the title to Swerve. So again, not at World's End, maybe. That might be a bit too soon. But around Revolution time, that might not be out of the ordinary. That might not be out of the question. So either Swerve or Joe, honestly, I would have be the ones to beat MJF for that championship at this point. Christopher L. from Facebook as well. No pun intended. No rhyme intended there. His first question was, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm just not at all feeling the Women's War Games match, which unfortunately has been a problem I've had for the last 3 years now. In my honest opinion, I feel the women getting the War Games match is more of a quality thing than it is them earning it, as none of the storylines that they have put into the War Games matches have warranted the cages being used. I love the 2019 match because it was a step in the direction of the downfall of Shayna's title reign. I despise the 2020 match because not only was the match devoid of storytelling, nothing but spots after spots after spots, and the in-ring psychology was beyond ass backwards with the heels being booked as babyfaces, and the babyfaces were made to look like absolute geeks, and Io Sky, the NXT Women's Champion at the time, was made to look like a complete moron and got pinned in the match. The 2021 one was forgettable, but it did have that cool, albeit ungodly, stupid spot of Cora Jade doing a senton off the top of the cage and separating her shoulder. In last year's, I wasn't too big of a fan of because of how, once again, it was nothing but a spot fest with no ring psychology, Io botching multiple times in the match, and just stupid stuff being thrown at the cage walls to see what stuck. One of my bigger drawbacks with the match was the constant need of the heel performers jumping off of the top of the cage for nothing more but a hollow pop from the crowd, despite it not supposed to be popping the crowd. But my biggest problem is if Nikki and Io jumping... I mean, how much more of this question do you have? Okay, you're almost done here. But my biggest problem is Nikki and Io jumping off the cage doesn't win them the match. Why does Becky doing her awful leg drop win the whole thing? It just irritated me. My question is this. Does the WWE need to make the War Games match for the women feel more warranted and earned? Do I make fair criticisms about the other 3 War Games matches? And why does WWE always struggle to book the current SmackDown Women's Champion right in this match? You're talking about Io Sky. Io Sky just hasn't had a lot of luck in the match. I mean, some of her matches in War Games, she just hasn't had the greatest showings. Listen, it isn't a quality thing, which is why they do it on the same show. I'm fine with the Women's War Games match if it makes sense. This year, it just doesn't make sense because Becky Lynch it kind of makes sense with the damage control developments, but if Dakota can't go, then you do 3-on-3. Adding in Becky is just fucking dumb. She's on Raw. She hasn't feuded with Damage Control in a while. They added her as the last female on the babyface team a year ago. It's the same angle, rinse and repeat. It's just lazy. But the same thing for the men, though. If you have a great storyline with the women where it makes sense, you don't need to do it with the men. With the men this year, somehow, one way or another, with the men for the last 5 or 6 years in NXT and on the main roster, they have found War Games matches around Survivor Series time, and I hate that they staple it to one show. I used to be a big proponent of doing it at one show like a Survivor Series, but in the last year or so, I've been thinking just do it as its own thing. Do it at SummerSlam if need be, or at WrestleMania. Maybe not at Mania, but, or on Raw like AEW does. I know it's a big attraction. You want to save it for pay-per-view, but they don't always need to do it on pay-per-view. I would not do it at the same time every year just because, it's November, time for War Games. No, you do it if it makes sense. The Judgment Day and Bloodline stuff the past 2 years made sense, and even in NXT it made sense with Undisputed Era and then Team NXT versus Team NXT 2.0. I liked all those matches, but with the women specifically, you're right. They just do it just to do it. And they've had great matches, but it goes back to what John Ritland mentioned last week or the week before. It's just all fucking garbage. Not garbage isn't bad, but they bring in the weapons. You don't need to put a hat on a hat. It's just not necessary. I would say the same thing for Hell in a Cell. There's been some cell matches that have had weapons and it's worked, but when you do it all the time, it's just use what you have, make the most out of that. You don't need to have a TLC match inside of a War Games. That's not what War Games is supposed to be. I know that's what it's been for WWE, but bring in a couple weapons, not every person bringing in 1 or 2 weapons. That's just overkill. So it's a combination of all of that and why I think this Women's War Games match will be very good. But it's the Women's War Games match in 2021 was not necessary. I honestly completely forget who was even in it beyond Toxic Attraction and Io Sky and Cora Jade. I don't even know if Io was in it. But it was those women, and it's why? It's just not, why even do it? They can have great matches, but if the storyline doesn't dictate doing a War Games, you don't do it just because there's a men's one and vice versa. His second question, which is not as long, he says, which Kurt Angle TNA feud is better in your opinion? Samoa Joe or AJ Styles? I love the chemistry between him and AJ and the dynamic of size and speed between the two men. However, I choose his work with Samoa Joe solely because every match between them felt like a war, and Kurt had more of an eloquent partner on the mic with Joe than he did with AJ. Not to mention 2 of the all-time great TNA matches involved these two. The first one was their match at Genesis 06 and the MMA cage match at Lockdown 08. What about you? I mean, you're probably right. The better feud would be Joe because it also helped put TNA on the map in 06. I mean, they were already on the map, but that's a more memorable feud, I think, than him and AJ for the reasons you mentioned. I would go AJ as my favorite. You said better. Probably Joe. I haven't seen the Joe matches. I have not gone back and watched those. I was not watching TNA at the time. I started watching TNA when Angle and Joe, or Angle and Styles, were having their feud, actually, in late 08. And they went on to feud again in 09 and 2010 and fucking 2013 and all these other years. So I'm more exposed to the Angle and Styles feud, but Angle and Joe probably was the better feud, more cohesive and coherent, better matches, better promos, so probably that one. Your third question. While I love the build to Survivor Series 2019 between NXT versus WWE, I look back on it as kind of feeling forced and hypocritical on the WWE side. What I mean is WWE had always looked their nose down on NXT as nothing more than developmental and nothing to care about. Then, as soon as All Elite Wrestling arrived, WWE tried to take the heat off of them by adding an Evolve reunion the same night, AEW, the same night that AEW had their Fight for the Fallen show in 2019. Then when AEW debuted on Wednesday in October of that year, they decided to put NXT on the USA Network the exact same night and have them go one-on-one against WWE for Survivor Series in nothing but an empty attempt for ratings grabs and take the shine off of AEW. Despite the fact that they condescendingly brushed them off on Twitter with that embarrassing marathon, not a sprint tweet. While Survivor Series and TakeOver that weekend was a massive success, it didn't exactly make WWE look good, and instead they came off as petty and vindictive, hot-shotting their way through NXT, or rather November and NXT, not feeling the same when 2020 rolled in. How do you feel about my assessment in this matter? Listen, I agree and I disagree. Everything you say about them trying to take the heat off of AEW is 1,000% true. Did it make the build of that pay-per-view or the pay-per-view itself any less enjoyable? No. Survivor Series 2019 is probably one of the best Survivor Series shows in the past 10-15 years because of the NXT element. Sometimes the competition actually does breed better results, and it did for NXT there at Survivor Series. They actually won that show because of the whole AEW thing. If there's no AEW, do they beat Raw and SmackDown? No shot in fucking hell that happens. No way. But it did make for a great show with a lot of good matches, and NXT went over strong. And I wouldn't say that, it wasn't the same when 2020 rolled in. People have said that. I disagree. I think the quality of NXT dipped when COVID happened, and they had to move to the Performance Center full-time. And then it obviously dipped when they went to, fucking NXT 2.0 and all this other sort of stuff. It wasn't the same during COVID at all. It just, the takeovers were a big part of NXT, and then you didn't really have that same crowd. Although NXT was still at least somewhat enjoyable in 2020 and 2021 until the rebrand, and now they're finally getting back to that point as of just recently. But no, I think when they went to Wednesdays and went head-to-head at Dynamite, both shows were doing great stuff. And NXT, it wasn't the same as it was, but they had to grow at some point. I said this at the time. They had to grow at some point. It went to a 2-hour show, and they filled the 2 hours exceptionally well with great matches and some really good storylines. And I don't think NXT became worse. NXT 5 years ago was enjoyable, but it was a developmental show with fucking squashes and stuff like that. But they were still doing that in NXT when it went 2 hours, but not as much. And they made it more of a 2-hour actual brand than just developmental. So when they went head-to-head with AEW, that wasn't what killed NXT. I mean, it did kill them in the ratings, but what killed NXT was the rebranding COVID. Those were the two biggest things, in my opinion, that did the black and gold era of NXT in. Your fourth question, which Brock Lesnar do you think is better? 02 to 04 Lesnar or 2012 to present Brock? Well, Brock was an absolute machine and deserving of his push in his first run when he returned. Despite him being lackluster and disappointing in the ring for the most part, he was a much bigger star than he was during his first run. What is your pick? Probably Brock during the first run. I mean, you said it yourself, he is a bigger star now, but Brock was still a pretty big star back then. I mean, I think Brock, he's had some amazing matches during this run. I've enjoyed Brock a lot. I think having him around is great. They've gotten very lazy with some of the title runs and his matches and feuds and shit like that. He's been around for a lot longer. He was only around 2 years, so it's not really much of a sample pool, but in those 2 years, he main evented Mania. He had a lot of great matches with Kurt Angle, The Rock, was booked amazingly well in 02. The Undertaker being another one. Even Big Show. I mean, he was an absolute machine back then. I would probably go first Brock because he was also doing more in the ring and he was more dynamic as a performer. Cowboy Brock puts it over the edge because Cowboy Brock's been amazing. But before that, he was just getting fucking boring before he went away in 2020. So I would probably go 02 to 04 Brock. With 2012, the present day Brock has not been bad whatsoever. And his last question, what Thanksgiving movies do you watch during this time of the year? And may I make a recommendation to watch and review all of the films from the legendary John Hughes, including the Home Alone movies. Also hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Thank you, Chris. You as well. Reviewing all of the Home Alone movies, I mean, I haven't done movie reviews here on the channel in a long time. I've just kind of reserved to, because I just watch so many movies that it's just, I just don't have the time for it with all the other stuff I do here on the channel. But I found a lot easier, as you know, Chris, because you've seen them and reply to them, that I just log everything I watch and review everything I watch and rate everything I watch on Letterboxd. I got into it earlier this year and I love the service because it tells me anyway, it allows me to keep track of when I watch this and what I thought of this and blah, blah, blah. So if I watch those movies, I mean, I've seen all the Home Alone, not all of them. I've seen 1 through 4. I have not seen the newer ones, which I heard were god-awful anyway, and 3 and 4 were also terrible. If I rewatch them this Christmas, which there's a pretty good chance I will because 1 and 2 are amazing, then I'll probably put a quick review up on Letterboxd about it. The John Hughes movies are great, though. I think, isn't Plane, Trains, and Automobiles a John Hughes movie? I think that's a John Hughes movie, as is Uncle Buck, which is also amazing. I am going to watch Plane, Trains, and Automobiles either tonight or tomorrow. That's a great Thanksgiving classic. So as far as like Thanksgiving movies to watch, it's only that one. And then after that, it's Christmas movies in like early December. But you know what I did watch yesterday that will probably become part of my mandatory Thanksgiving viewing? The Thanksgiving movie itself, which looked completely fucking ridiculous. And it was, don't get me wrong, but like in a good way. It was dumb fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's in theaters right now from Eli Roth. They'll probably put it up on a streamer at some point. I actually really liked it. And all the theaters I saw that were playing it had like sold really well ticket-wise last night. I mean, it was $5, but still, that's pretty impressive. But yeah, Thanksgiving would probably be now joining Planes, Trains, and Automobiles as part of my annual Thanksgiving viewing. Next question is going to come from the Twitter machine. Let's see, at Iwagu91. Did you notice Jey Uso's expression when Cody announced Randy Orton as the fifth member of their team? I did not notice that in the moment. I noticed that after the fact when someone posted about it on Twitter, and I thought it was great. I love the attention to detail. I thought they did a great job with it as far as kind of acknowledging that Jey was instrumental in putting Randy on the shelf to begin with back in 2022, a year and a half ago. And that should be interesting when he comes back, a lot like the Drew and Jey interaction and Drew not being happy at Jey. Will Randy feel the same way? It's interesting. So I love the attention to detail. They're doing a great job with Jey and that whole storyline. I thought that was an awesome touch. At Reborn Again, John Ritland again, speaking of whom, his first question, he said, firstly, happy Thanksgiving again. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. You as well. He said, secondly, after the Full Gear discourse got super insane, how do you think the show ranks amongst the number of AEW pay-per-views? Oh, I don't know. Probably somewhere in the middle. It wasn't their best show. It wasn't their worst show. It was an enjoyable show. Most AEW pay-per-views have been very good. It was a very, very good show, if not a great show. I enjoyed it on the whole. Didn't have as many issues with it as other people did, but they've also had some really killer shows from those first few years. So they've done so many that it's really hard to rank them at this point, but it would probably be somewhere in the middle, and that's a compliment because they've had some pretty bad shows, and they've also had some really good ones as well. At Iwagu91, back to them. Again, I haven't put the questions in order yet. I apologize. He said, what are your thoughts on Matt Sydal, formerly known as Evan Bourne? I like Evan Bourne. I've been a fan of his since his ECW days, and not the original ECW, but the WWE ECW 15 years ago. You know, I thought they could have done more with him. It would have been cool to see him as like a United States champion. The guy could never talk for shit. He still doesn't have great mic skills. I was happy when AEW signed him. They just haven't done anything with him at all. He's had the occasional TV match. And again, there's really nothing. He's just kind of like a quality hand to have on the roster. He's not really someone that you push. But, you know, the Daniels tag team currently in Ring of Honor is fine. I think they used to team back in the day anyway. Funny story, I actually met him at an indie show almost a decade ago, about 9 years ago this month. And it was the most random main event you'll ever see. It was a main event from the Northeast Wrestling Championship, the local promotion around here that's very good. It was for the top title. Matt Taven, current Ring of Honor and AEW star, defending against Matt Sydal in a triple threat against Matt Sydal and AJ Styles. And it was an excellent match, every bit as good as you would expect. And I met him afterward because I missed him during the meet and greet. And I don't think I even paid for a picture. Like, I just asked for a picture quickly when he was walking through the audience area. And I had a Coke can with me. And he was like, oh, can I spit in that? Because he was like chewing tobacco or something. I don't know. He was making jokes, and I was wearing a Punk shirt. And he was like, oh, I like Punk. Punk's cool with me, or whatever he said. Or I was wearing a Punk hat, I think, in the picture. The picture I still have. But he was really fucking down to earth, and he was really cool. So, yeah, I'm a Matt Sydal fan. John's second question, at Reborn Again. He said, do you think there's a chance Nakamura's recent string of promos could spell a return for Punk in an open challenge at the pay-per-view this Saturday? No, I mean, I think they did the Randy Orton thing on purpose and announced it the way that they did because they want to save him for the pay-per-view, but they also don't want people thinking it's CM Punk. There's no way they would have done that unless they want to tell you it is not this person. It is not CM Punk. They would have just had Randy come back as a surprise. But they're wise to not do that because people are not dumb. I mean, I don't want to say people are dumb, but people would assume it's CM Punk. And I don't think CM Punk's coming back yet. He probably will. I am not convinced he'll be back on Saturday. Could he be? Sure. Anything's possible. I don't think he will be. I don't think they would. I don't even think they would want to blow two returns in the same night for Orton and Punk. So, no. I feel like if Nakamura was going to have an open challenge, they would have announced it by now. I guess he could just randomly come out. But Nakamura was on Raw this week, but they made no mention of him having a match on Saturday. Plus, they already have 5. I mean, they could add a 6 if it was like a quick match, but I don't want Nakamura getting squashed by Punk. So, no. I don't think they do that, but, anything's possible. I don't think Nakamura is talking about Punk. If Punk's not coming in anytime soon and they could be kayfabing people, it's possible. Then maybe. I don't think that he would be... I mean, it's also possible they don't know who he's talking about yet. They haven't figured that out. Someone mentioned this to me on Twitter. It makes a lot of sense. Brock Lesnar, who he had history with in Japan from 15 years ago, but more importantly, like, it sounds like he's referencing someone that's not currently on the show. Like, if he's talking about Sammy or fucking Cody, that's stupid because they're already on the show and that would be underwhelming. It would have to be someone returning. Braun would be just... I don't care about that at all. But Brock, not that I don't love it, but I mean, I also don't want Brock squashing Nakamura, but that would be worth it. Him calling out an old enemy and Brock comes out of hibernation or whatever. I think that would actually make a lot more sense. My money's actually on it being Brock, to be perfectly honest, because we haven't seen him since SummerSlam and he should be back soon. At Iwagu91, their question was, what match do you think is the best of AEW this year? MJF versus Danielson or Hangman versus Swerve at Full Gear? Lastly, I hope you enjoy Thanksgiving. Thank you, Iwagu. I hope you enjoyed as well. I think they actually added a follow-up tweet this morning saying that they forgot about Omega and Ospreay. Honestly, my favorite match of the year was MJF and Danielson, I think, for AEW. Omega and Ospreay, both of them in New Japan and AEW were amazing. If you said that one, I mean, it probably will win match of the year. That's fine, because that was also a great match. I just really liked MJF and Danielson more, especially that closing stretch. They had one of the best Iron Man matches ever, and that's not a very easy task. So I would probably go with that. Hangman and Swerve I really liked as well, but the fucking disgusting blood drinking was just disgusting. So I could see that winning match of the year for some people, not for me, but that's just me personally. Back to John at Reborn Again, at Reborn Again from Twitter. Back to him again, I should say. John's third question here, non-wrestling related, but with the recent firing of Melissa, who played Sam in the recent Scream movies, should they just scrap Scream 7 altogether? So this is in relation to that whole controversy of her tweeting that the Gaza stuff, and I think she was pro-Palestine. I forgot if it was, forgive me, I am very ignorant with this stuff, and I should definitely know more. But I think the stuff that she was tweeting about was very logical, like in defense of like innocent people, and she was speaking out on issues that should be spoken out about. And I think this has happened in general with other people getting fired from stuff. Maybe they were on the other side and saying that it was okay that they were being treated that way. I don't remember. I've seen a lot of people getting fired from projects for making comments about what's going on right now in Palestine. I think her comment specifically, and again, I'm very ignorant with this stuff as far as what's even going on over there, but the stuff that she said, according to what people have kind of made a big fuss about in the last 24 hours, were actually defending like people that should be defended. Like she was taking the proper, logical, moral stance on it, and she got fired. Maybe because, I mean, they actually put out a statement about it that seemed pretty tone deaf. Like, she was talking, like, I don't know, their response was really dumb. I'm not the best person to ask about it, as far as, like, I just don't know that much. I've just seen what you've seen as far as the Twitter posts go, where she had made a comment about, like, or they had said something about, like, oh, like, genocide or something, you can't be talking about it, even though she was, like, not condoning it. It was something very strange. I think on the surface, if all of that is true, it seems like a very dumb reason to fire someone that seems completely stupid because they don't want their actors getting political or something. Who gives a fuck? Like these are not, to me anyway, not political issues. These are human rights issues. Like she's defending people. She's not saying, oh, I'm voting Republican or Democrat, blah, blah, blah. No, these are like human issues. And she spoke out about it and got fired. So I think that's very dumb. I actually didn't love her acting in that first Scream movie from last year. I'm not saying, oh, I don't care she got fired. To get fired for that is pretty fucking fucked up. And not only that, too, this is like completely pales in comparison to the stuff we just talked about with like the human rights issues. I thought her acting was not great in that first Scream movie, the one that came out last year. I thought that movie sucked. She was much better in this most recent one. I still would not fire her. And also, that whole movie, it seemed like, kind of left us on a note where she was kind of headed towards excuse my wrestling terminology, toward a heel turn. And that would, I would assume, be the plot of Scream 7 or Scream 8 or whatever fucking movie it is. So to get rid of her, unless they were to recast her, which would also be dumb, I don't like when they do that, is stupid. And then I also saw today, since you asked me this last night, I think this is true. Reportedly, Jenna Ortega is off the project as well. She asked to be taken off. It's standing in unison with that actor Sam. So I think that's great. And I honestly hope they just scrap the movie. And that's in addition to, I think, lowballing Neve Campbell. Either that's, I'm sorry, I don't know if that's the actress's name or the character's name. I don't remember. But apparently she got lowballed despite being the face of the franchise. That was a whole other issue, so people aren't really happy at them right now. I thought the New York movie was great. I would not go further than that. I would not do another movie anyway. I think to do another one would be dumb, especially in light of these circumstances. They'll probably make it regardless without him, which would just be stupid. But just watch them do it. They probably will. At Jeffrey here, or at WheelJack83 Jeffrey. His question was WWE revealing Randy Orton as the fifth man this week the right call to avoid disappointment over not being CM Punk? Yeah, like I said, I didn't like the way that they did it because he didn't even say Randy Orton's name. That would have gotten a much bigger pop. He just said, this crowd's right. Okay, that kind of felt anticlimactic. But they had to do it that way because with them being in Chicago, people would have been like, CM Punk's coming in. Like, no, he could still. Again, like I said, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not Punk on the team. Randy makes way more sense. So I hate that they had to do that, but they kind of had to, so they don't get people's hopes up. If this was WWE 5 years ago, they wouldn't give a fuck. Like, when Vince was in charge, he wouldn't care. He would be like, okay, make people think it's Punk, and then it's not Punk, and then it ruins Randy Orton's return. Not ruins, but it's going to significantly dampen it, so I'm glad they're not doing that. I'm glad they said ahead of time it's Orton. I wish there was more of a surprise. But, I get why they did what they did and why they did it and how they did it the way that they did. At Lex DeGiacomo, the beautiful Alexis. Her question was, what's your solution to the MCU seemingly nixing Kang from their future plans? Aside from not doing that, what would you suggest instead? I know what I would do. This is, obviously worthy of a whole separate video. We've already discussed this ourselves as far as the future of the MCU and it's being a mess right now. I would not nix Kang, and I know people had said, I had seen some videos of people saying that Kang was never going to be the big bad. And that in the comics, it was always going to be Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom is a great villain for Secret Wars. The issue is that if they were going to put him in Secret Wars, I guess they could build him up in the MCU between now and then. But it just feels fucking rushed. I think Jonathan Majors, whatever issues are going on with him, the Kang character I think has been great. From what I've seen of him in the first season and second season of Loki, and then in Quantumania, the best part of that movie, I want him to be the big bad. They haven't, quote-unquote, booked the character well. But, this whole idea that it was supposed to be Doctor Doom this whole time, it's like, then why would they call the movie, to throw people off? Why would they call it Kang Dynasty and then change plans? Why would they hire the writer for Quantumania and then let him go? That's not supposed to be a swerve. That means they changed plans. It was not always supposed to be Doctor Doom. And I don't know if they're completely moving away from Kang. I think they are going forward with Kang, but they have to build him up and make him more of a threat between now and then. Don't get rid of him. Obviously, like you said, I agree. Don't get rid of Kang. I would make him the big bad for this phase and save Doctor Doom for down the road after you establish the Fantastic Four and stuff like that. I don't know. It's not comic accurate if he's not in Secret War. Who gives a fuck? Like, Doctor Doom isn't in the MCU yet. I don't give a shit. Who cares? Wait. Hold him off for the post-Secret Wars Mania Raw. That's so dumb, but you get my point. You got to make him more of a threat, though. You got to make him more of a threat between now and Secret Wars. Build him up more. Put him in more stuff. It's as simple as that, because so far he doesn't really feel like a threat. And they have to have him interact with more stuff and have him involved in more projects. Until he is, he's not going to feel like a threat. So it's really as simple as that, I think. At Colin_McAndrew, his question was, he says, please do not take this as a negative, just curiosity. In a world where video is becoming a stronger way to connect with the audience, why do you only do audio for #AskGSM? A good question, not a negative at all. I don't take offense to that at all. The funny thing is that I actually, if you go back to the archives in the 10 years I've been doing the show, I did do video for hashtag for the first 3 or so years, I think. I've never not only just on audio. So it's funny, when I got my microphone that I have now almost 9 years ago at this point, which is crazy, my Yeti microphone, I did video for everything. The audio wasn't great. The audio came through the fucking video camera I was using at the time, not great quality. But I did video for everything here on the channel. And then After I got my microphone, I kind of transferred everything to audio just because it was easier, and I don't love video, and I don't know, I'm just not a video guy. But I kept doing video for hashtag through I want to say 2016 because I remember doing it on video in 2016, but I also remember doing it audio in 2016. So I think it was when we moved the show from Mondays to Wednesdays that I started doing audio. It was just easier when I was in college and then just after the fact. I just like, and that was 7 years ago, which is wild. I just like audio more. For me, it's just easier. At some point, you are absolutely right. Video would be better. I've had this talk with Alexis before. I was doing more video stuff here on the channel. I've done live streams for video, and in recent years, I've done mostly audio. It's just, I don't know, I need a better background and setup and stuff like that. I just don't have a great setup as it is right now. It's not bad. That's kind of my key thing. And also, just audio for me is just easier to edit. It really is. So I can chop it up with video. You can chop it up, but it's not as easy, which is why I don't like doing it. I just kind of, when it's on video, I just do one long take. Whereas with the audio, sometimes I can chop it up, or if I mess up, or if I get a fucking phone call or something, I can stop it. Or if I have to do something or whatever. So I just prefer audio, but video is not a bad idea. So maybe at some point I probably will go back to doing video. It would be easier. It would be a better way of connecting with the audience. And maybe at some point we can take it to a live stream and ask questions over a live stream and do it that way as opposed to the format we do it now. Or just a hybrid of both, which is what I've done before for other, we did that with episode 500. So, not a bad idea. Maybe at some point again down the road we'll go back to doing that. At noob_n_co-tv, their first question was, what is going on with Imperium? It seems that Gunther is appreciating Giovanni Vinci over Ludwig Kaiser. I get the feeling that Ludwig Kaiser might be getting a singles run without Imperium as evidence of that video package a couple of months ago. I think that was like a month ago. It wasn't a couple of months ago, but maybe it was, and I don't remember. Yeah, I think they're teasing tension with Kaiser and Vinci. I think they're going to boot Vinci, if anything. I don't think they would boot Kaiser. I would keep Imperium altogether, but it seems like Vinci might be going off on his own. I don't have any faith they would use him properly on his own beyond the one-off match with like Gunther or Kaiser. I know he had a singles run in NXT. He's not the most charismatic guy, but he is great in the ring. So, yeah, I think they're just teasing tension to just kind of switch things up within the group, and then maybe they'll go back to being on the same page, or Vinci gets booted. Either way, I'm digging what they're doing right now. His second question, what were your thoughts on Full Gear? It was a good show, but there's some questionable spots, like the finish of the AEW Women's title match, and that blood spot in the Texas Deathmatch, and the main event was extremely unnecessary overall. It was an okay show. I actually agree. I thought the finish of the women's match sucked. The Toni Storm Shida match, that whole match was kind of a mess. It was not that good. And the finish came off awful. I mean, Aubrey Edwards looks like an idiot for not spotting the tray or whatever it was in her ass. The Texas Deathmatch, not my cup of tea, as I've said before. They put forth a great effort. The blood shit was just disgusting. Not the fact that they bled, but the drinking of the blood was so fucking stupid and unnecessary. I don't care what anyone says. That was just stupid. The overall match was, fine though. It was good. And then the main event I enjoyed the main event. I thought it was a really good main event, but the whole Cole thing will fill in for MJF, even though Cole's actually hurt, was stupid too. Like, how does that even make sense? And it had the smoke and the mirrors, and they tried to have a great match while also trying to put in, like, the shenanigans. That was kind of a mess. But overall, I liked the match. I really liked the match. And overall, I thought it was a really good show, like I said earlier. Not their best show, but not their worst show either. It was somewhere probably in the middle. At BillMeister88, their first question was, last of two for today's show. Your thoughts on Will Ospreay being the new Sonic for AEW, and do you think that this was his best choice of company? I think Will Ospreay is an amazing pickup for them. He is probably the best wrestler in the world right now. Was it the best choice? I would say yes, because it's a safer bet. But sometimes you can't always do the safer bet. Sometimes you got to take a risk, like when Cody Rhodes went back to WWE or AJ Styles went back to WWE. With a Will Ospreay, though, he's young. He can always go to WWE down the road if he wants to. He's only 30, I think. He's really young. Not like 25, but still, that's for someone that I thought was around for a lot longer than that. He was like fucking 22 when I first started seeing him in Ring of Honor in 2016, I guess. 22, 23. He's very young. He can always go back down the road. Not go back, but go to WWE down the road. He already has a built-in exposure with AEW. He can do Japan. He doesn't have to move, I think is the biggest thing. WWE would have offered him a lot of money, but listen, now he doesn't have to move to the US, which it sounds like he really did not want to do. So going to AEW just probably makes the most sense. It's a better landing spot than TNA, and I love TNA, but Impact or whatever, but they're just too small of a platform. It was either WWE or AEW, and he can go to WWE down the road. AEW is a safe bet, and I do think he will not get lost in the shuffle. I think they'll treat him like a star. He'll be fine. He'll probably be he definitely will be world champion at some point, and he can be in the main event of Webley in August. I think he kind of had his eyes on that and figured, yeah, that's a possibility, and I could definitely do that. And now he's there. So we'll see how his run shakes out and see if he made the decision ultimately in the long run, and I think he did, but I was disappointed he's not going to WWE a little bit, but not like angry that he didn't go there. Like, who gives a shit? And the last question, his second question, when will AEW reveal the devil, and who do you think it is? The more time that goes on, I'm convinced that it's actually MJF, and it's a huge swerve from people thinking it's Adam Cole, baby. Someone else brought that up to me recently. I just think that'd be so fucking dumb. One, that's a swerve for the sake of a swerve. Second of all, what does that even accomplish? That was my question to someone that brought that up to me recently. What does that even accomplish? I know what you're saying and what, like, the whole idea behind that. Oh, it's the greatest trick the devil ever pulled would be convincing him that he never existed. Well, okay. Couple things. One, he already pulled that shit a year ago. He did the whole, I'm going to pretend to be a babyface, but I'm actually a heel. We've seen this with him at least twice before. To do it a third time is lazy. Two, he's their number one babyface. They've got a lot of good heels right now. If MJF turns heel, who takes that spot? Seriously, like who? Like Kenny Omega? Like, no. I mean, MJF is the guy right now. With Adam Cole being gone, if they wanted to turn MJF and Adam Cole as the new number one babyface, then sure, but he's hurt. So that's not happening. And the third thing, what would even from a storyline standpoint make sense about him being the devil? He's already the world champion. He's already got everyone after him. What would him being the devil even accomplish? It's not like he turned on Adam Cole. Like, if the devil injured Adam Cole, that might make more sense. But he didn't. And Adam Cole just got hurt on his own. It could very well be Cole. I think it's still probably Jack Perry. And then they'll reveal it tonight in Chicago. It's like, oh, Jack Perry. Like, okay, cool, whatever. I think it's probably him. I mean, Cole could play a factor, but he won't be back anytime soon, so that's why I don't think it's him. I think MJF would be, unless it's like Tony Khan, which would be like the worst option. MJF is an option to consider for the reasons that, given his track record, but I just think it'd be fucking stupid. I just think it'd be so dumb because I just feel like, well, like, what is that? He's already the champion. It's not like he's trying to attack the world champion and take his title. He is the world champion. He's out there making life miserable for himself. Like, that would just be stupid. So it's just so convoluted. I hope they don't do that. Almost as convoluted as that main event at Full Gear, which gives me, a worrying feeling that they would do what you're suggesting. Not to shit on you, Billy, but I just think that'd be very dumb. Not that Jack Perry's this exciting option, but I just feel like that would be more logical than MJF himself. And that's going to do it, guys, for today's episode of #AskGSM. Episode 521, I believe, here today for the Thanksgiving Eve edition, the annual classic, as always. Thank you guys, as always, for sending in questions to the show. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself, on the Facebook page. And then last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section in this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome Thanksgiving, folks. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.